Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Mandates with Guitar Greats. And today, boy, do we have a treat. Today I'm sitting down with a longtime friend of mine, somebody that I have been constantly inspired by for many years, ever since I first saw him playing when he was just a wee boy. And I mean, I was going to say he's just as good as he was when he was a young boy, but now somehow he seems to be even better. So I would like to say a huge hello and thank you very much for your time, of course, to Mr. Jack Gardiner. How's it going, Jack?
Yo, it's great to see you again, Levi. It's been too long, man. I can't remember the last time we were actually in the same room together.
Yeah. We're apparently supposed to be in the same room together in November. I've not heard anything about that, but I guess I could follow that up. Who knows? Worldwide pandemics and all of that. How's life treating you over in Switzerland?
Yeah, man, it's all good. It's a little bit weird. We're all pretty much back to normal, and we have been since about May, at least here, which worries me slightly. Whereas we've been to like the big cities, we've had to go to do a few little things there, and it's a totally different feeling. I guess it's more like the UK, or what I've heard. The UK is like where everybody is actually following the social distancing, and everybody's like, including us, are wearing masks and things like that. But here in the village, man, I mean, this weekend you wouldn't have known that there even was a pandemic. Like there was literally a festival outside my house. So yeah, bizarre.
It's really different here because you say in the UK, but of course I'm up in Scotland, and we're really, for some reason, who would have guessed it, very kind of like, we're not English, we don't do what the English do. So old Nicky Sturgeon has got us on much stricter ways of going about our day-to-day life than general England are doing things. So I think it's probably even tighter up here in terms of what we are and aren't allowed to do, which hopefully is going to be good in the long run. Who knows? I mean, I work from home, so it doesn't really bother me all that much that, no, I have to wear a mask when I go to the shop. Well, I don't go to the shop very often, and oh no, I can't go to work. Oh wait, I can. I just walk into my studio and do stuff. Anyway, so of course we are here to we're here to promote. Like, I'm not going to lie, we're here to promote a product. We're here to try and sell something, but also have a good conversation. So you recently just released your first proper release, right? Escapades.
Yeah, man.
Which is more of an EP than an LP, right? What, 6 tracks? Yeah. 6 tracks?
Yes.
I feel like I should know. I transcribed it. But yeah, go on. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Escapades, and more importantly, why is it taking you so long to release it?
Oh man, yeah. So essentially, it's 6 tracks. I think it's about 25 minutes or so. But I'd had demos for years, essentially, of tracks. There's a couple on there like Neo, which I think I'd done just as a video for Facebook, I think it was back then. It wasn't even Instagram or YouTube. Just around the bank holiday in August, I think it was. So that was really just me going, okay, here's a little jam for that. Let's do it. But it wasn't until lockdown that I started to think I really should do some music, So I'd say for about the past 2, 3, maybe even 4 years, I've been like, I want to get a release out, but things just haven't worked out. Like, you do the typical thing if you record a tune and you're not happy with the sounds that you're getting in the box, like, like the drum sounds or the production sounds. So you just go, scrap that. It's no good. I don't want that, So it got to April, it was March when we went into lockdown, wasn't it? And like, originally I was toying around with the idea of doing it. I had a few things to get out of the way, like lessons and things like that. And then it was April 19th, I've still got the date, where I decided, so this was, April 19th was the Sunday. The 18th, I'd sat and listened to just tons of music, like on Spotify, trying to really find like what sounds are going to inspire me. And one album came on, and I mean, I'd heard it before, but not really paid that much attention to it, which was Owain's album. I think it was, the last one which he'd done. And when you just get something stuck on repeat and you're like, there's something about this that's really quirky and cool. And I was like, I really like the humor in there, as well as like all the production elements and stuff. And the way that Owain is kind of like blended kind of like more traditional fusion style sounds, I guess, like the 80s type sounds and the keyboard choice sounds and synth sounds and stuff, with this like modern guitar, I was like, oh, I'd love for my music to have that sound. That's like the dream almost. So I'm there listening to it on repeat for days, and I was doing the dishes. I was driving my missus mad because I had them on the monitors, and I said to her, I was like, I've got to get in touch with Owain. I've got to do it. Maybe he'll accept to do it. Maybe he won't. Anyway, decided to redo the demo for Sky Blue Pink the next day. So that was the Sunday. And as I'm re-recording this demo, like I only had the verse and like the middle eight, I think, at that point, a message comes through on Facebook off Owain saying, yo, man, he was like, I know this is a bit out of the blue, but he was like, I just wanted to let you know I've been like a long-time fan since like 2013 or something. And I was like, what are the chances of this? Like, I was literally going to send you this demo when it's done. So anyway, I ended up finishing the demo, messaged him, and I said, is it okay if I send you this? And he was like, oh man, it'd be an honor. Let me take a listen to it. And I honestly thought he was just going to say, bin it, like it's rubbish, or I'm too busy, or it'll cost you X amount, 10 times as much as I could afford. And he literally was like, man, I don't think you realise the potential in this. He was like, I'm well up for doing it. I'll send you something back ASAP. So that was Sunday night. So Monday afternoon, he sent me back what is pretty much like the final like Sky Blue Pink track. Yeah. Like there was just little bits that we needed to tweak, and obviously the mix and stuff like that. But yeah, that was it. Then we were on a roll. He was asking me to just send any demos that I thought were like good enough. So Neo was the next one actually, and so what you hear on that, there's a video actually on YouTube where I played it on the other Strandberg.
Yeah.
It's just that file. Yeah. It's essentially, that was the live take, and he did extend like one pause in it so that there was like a longer keyboard break on one note, but that is essentially just like one audio thing.
I thought that was, fascinating when doing the transcriptions for it. I initially, when I saw the track list, and I was like, oh, okay, so I've seen him play Neo, so I'll be able to use that as a reference for the fingerings and things, so I can get it as accurate as possible. But then to listen to it and go, oh wow, he's literally used this take, and then has sort of taken that thing and turned it into, like, padded that out and fleshed it out into a bigger piece of art. Because for anyone that's familiar with that particular performance, and I'll probably cut in a little bit of it here, anyone that's familiar with this performance, there's, of course, like, as part of the jazz fusion type vibe, like, rawness and liveness is encouraged. You want that, and that's exactly what that is. It's like, that is the take. That is what people will think of if they've heard you perform it before. I think that's what they're going to think of. And to go, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and re-record that and try and capture that exact same piece of magic. It doesn't make any. It makes absolutely no sense for me to for someone to try and do that. You did it with another track on the record, is that right? Well, I know
yes.
That. I forget which one it is, though.
Yeah. Until Next Time, that was the other one, yeah. So, actually, with that one, if you listen to that right at the beginning, I'd sent it to the guys from Boss, because that was using the GT1000, and they'd said to me, oh, Jack, it sounds amazing, just did you know that there's like a weird audio glitch at the beginning of that, which I hadn't heard, and I listened back and I was like, Owain, like, do we need to sort that? And he was just like, nah, man, leave it in. Like, it sounds cool. Like, there's like a little. It sounds almost like a film roll. I think it's actually the interference from the mobile phone with the guitar. So that'll never be recreated, kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, again with that one, there is one chord that he was like, oh, that just needs to breathe a little bit more. So there's, again, like a pad. But with those two pieces, I think really, like, the inspiration was like, in video games like Final Fantasy, or like, of course, the game Neo, which that one's named after.
We'll talk about those.
Yeah. Oh, man. So in that you hear that kind of style, don't you? You know, where it's like fleshed out with a piano, or like usually it is just piano, I guess, as the main instrument. I think with those two, I was trying to go, what if it's the guitar that's taking the lead, and then the pianos and the pads are all around it, kind of thing, you know? And Owain, like, all I said to him for the inspiration for that was, I said, oh man, do you think it'd work as like a duo between guitar and piano? And that's what he sent back to me like the next day again with Neo. That was the whole orchestrated
I mean,
thing.
he's also a very talented gentleman, you know.
Yeah. Oh man,
Yeah.
a freak. He's this, in terms of like, the most scary aspect about Owain is that he has none of like the theory knowledge that we have. So if I was to say to you like, oh, it's just an A minor 7, or it's an A minor 11 chord, like voice it however you want. If I said that to Owain, he'd just be like, what's that? Literally, he's got no idea.
Yeah.
But you know, like, he'd send me back ideas for like reharms. And I'm like, oh, do you know what you're doing there? And he's just like, oh no, I thought that progression sounds cool, the way that there's the chromatic movement. Yeah. He won't even say chromatic movements. He'll say like, oh, the way that note moves down, like that, you know. And you're like,
I mean, that's the right way to do things, right? It's being led by the music, and then after the fact, we can explain it if needs be. Exactly. But it probably doesn't even need to be explained.
Yeah, man. But that's exactly it, isn't it? You know, like, I mean, he's using the ear, which again is the most important thing. Like, there's a lot of guys, I know you'll have had pupils definitely like this. The theory-wise and harmony-wise, they know their shit like an encyclopedia. But the playing's not necessarily there, or those ideas don't translate onto the instrument, do they? You know,
I always go for the description. There's certain players that I've levied this towards over the years. It sounds like they've read every book on music that has ever existed, but they've never actually heard any.
Yes, yeah, that is it.
You've got to get that the other way around. It's taken me, you know, a very long time. I've been playing for 17 years now, a long old time, and yeah, it's only been in the last 5 years that I've actually started to appreciate that listening to music and imitating the things you hear and treating music as a language and being able to hear something and adapt to it, hearing something and reacting, responding to it, like, that's so much more valuable than hearing something and going, well, that sounds like it's this particular scale and the most likely chord that it's going to go to is this, and then so the most appropriate arpeggio substitution for me to play over it would be like, I've done that, I've been there, and I'm still battling my way out of that type thing. So to kind of like for anyone to look at guys like that don't know any music theory whatsoever and to think, oh well, they're just, you know, hampering their own creativity. No, sometimes they're not. If you've exposed yourself to enough music and you've got a really good ear to be able to imitate anything you hear, you might not be sure. I'm going to say it's probably more effective if you're able to fluently communicate with your fellow musicians.
Yes,
but I would much rather somebody was able to make something musically profound and then struggle to communicate than somebody is able to fluently communicate but can't create anything profound. So
man, spot on. You've summed up my whole thoughts on that, like 100%. But I mean, that's it. Like, what's the issue? You know, like, I think with Owain as well, the speed at which he could do these things with his ear, that totally it makes it pointless for me to even explain. I'd rather let him do the thing. If he wasn't able to recreate the sounds of those chords, then what's the point? If he can't hear them, what is the point anyway? If I tell him that this is the case, then it's just like a learning process for both of us that way, isn't it? Whereas if I just let him go with it, if there is something wrong, I can tell him, like, theoretically, but if not, then let it be.
Yeah.
That's it.
I used to be that. Well, the thing that you shouldn't be there. I would record things and I'd go, oh, I really like the way that sounds, but I can't explain it, so it's not allowed to be there. type thing, and that's
Yes.
it's like musical autism. Like it's a very hard habit to break out of, and free yourself from that. Well, I need to follow the path, and yeah, you don't always necessarily need to be able to explain things that you do. Of course, using it as a springboard to then learn more about something is not necessarily a bad thing, but yeah, being led by the ear is magic. So why don't we springboard off of that then? Let's go back a little bit into your kind of development as a player, because you have, and I've said this for the longest time, you have a ridiculously recognizable voice on the instrument, and I think people underestimate. There are a few younger guys, like our generation of up and coming players, that have really unique voices on the instrument. You would be one where I think your sound is instantly recognizable. I mean, I can hear the influences, of course, but they've melded into your own thing. And there are guys like George Marius that, again, I think he's just really underrated because he has that unique voice. When George plays, you know it's George. So could we talk briefly about your kind of earlier influences and how you... Because, of course, you studied with Tom Quayle for a long time, and I know that was massively influential on you. But, yeah, like, how have you become you, Jack? Explain it to us.
Oh, man. So, I mean, if you go back, talking about George, though, I must say he's a freak. He's frightening. Before I go into talking about me, yeah, people should check him out, definitely. He doesn't get the recognition I think he deserves, you know. He's one of them. But, yeah, in terms of, like, early influences then... The one thing which I do remember as a kid before I played guitar was definitely stuff like Hendrix and Free and stuff like that. That was like just my dad used to listen to that. You know, my dad's a massive Grateful Dead fan, actually. He's a big hippie. I think you've met him.
Oh, yeah, I've met your dad. And as soon as you said he's a massive Grateful Dead fan, I just laughed to myself and went, yeah, I buy that.
Yeah, totally, 100%. But... he did have a Zappa Plays Zappa VHS or DVD. I don't know whether it was still VHS back then. And it was Steve Vai. When I heard him, that was when I was like, oh my God, that's how... can I swear on this? I don't know.
Yeah. Fuck, shit, bastard, can't do it.
I was like, Jesus, this is how I want to play guitar. I'll never forget that moment. And then, so I got massively into Vai around, I think, like 10 or 11. And then it was Yngwie I discovered. That was around like when I first discovered YouTube, so I could see all of these players, which I guess in Liverpool, there wasn't really that many people into this kind of stuff, to be honest. Like most of them, it was straight ahead rock. That's all you're into.
We should also just point out, like, because you're talking about these influences, how young were you? You would have been really young then, because when you just started to discover YouTube, because you started putting videos on YouTube when you were what, 11?
I think so, yeah, maybe
really
13.
Young.
13, I think, maybe, was the first.
You're a wee boy with blonde hair, like...
white blonde. Yeah. That was because, actually, so there's another player, Rob Marcello. I loved him. He was like an idol when I was a kid. I think he was the first guy I saw playing Sir guitars, actually, before Guthrie. So that was, like, kind of the big thing. But then... Yngwie was actually, I know you don't hear that in my playing, but he was like a massive, massive influence. I think maybe that's why I love still the kind of single coil Strat sound. Sure. You know, like his vibrato is
the best.
Yeah.
It's the best.
Yes,
stop.
Literally.
Anyone that wants to argue with that, you're allowed an opinion, and because of course you're allowed an opinion, and the beauty of being allowed an opinion is you're allowed to be wrong, and you are.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, him, and then. I think, so Paul Gilbert was the other guy, so Mr. Big. So my dad in turn, he's a bass player, like he was into guys like John Patitucci's his favourite bass player, actually, even though he's a Grateful Dead fan. I know that's weird. John Patitucci is like his absolute idol, but also he had videos of Billy Sheehan, so I think that's how I discovered Paul Gilbert and Mr. Big, and like stuff like Addicted to That Rush and Green Tinted 60s Man, they were like huge when I was 13. That was all I wanted to listen to in the car, you know, if we would go on a drive to Wales or something. And my dad would allow that. That was, maybe Dragon Force wasn't allowed in there. That was maybe an early influence as well. But yeah, he couldn't stand them. But yeah, then I guess it was the YouTube generation. So when I discovered the likes of yourself, Tom Quayle, Martin Miller, Guthrie was the huge one. I think that when I was like, 14 or 15, Erotic Cakes, I discovered that. And that was all I would listen to, like on the bus on the way into town. I remember I still used to have like the CD player when everyone else had iPods and stuff. I had the little CD thing.
That you desperately try and keep flat.
Yeah, so it wouldn't jump. Yeah, like in the school blazer pocket. I remember that. But yeah, so that was a huge influence. Wonderful slippery thing. I remember hearing that and just being like, "Oh my word!" And of course, when it was blues jam tracks, not even jam track central. I think there was like the Larry Carlton jam. There was a lick in there. I overplay it. I'll play it now for you. You know the should be this, which I use in everything, obviously, or I used to. So he was like the big DNA print, I think, for me, alongside obviously Tom and Martin. Tom, I met him when I was 16, and we started actually private lessons. I did a few with him, and that was kind of like the game changer in terms of like all the harmony and the theory and the approach to the instruments and the visualization. And Rick Graham, of course, as well, who was huge influence. Like, the man's probably got the scariest technique on the planet.
Yeah.
Like, just seeing that in person was frightening as a 16-year-old. I think that's a point I should make, is like, just sitting in the room and jamming with Tom and Rick probably taught me more than any kind of lessons could, because it was being able to see. I mean, we'd jam for like 6 hours at a time sometimes, and it was really weird in the sense that we'd take like 3 minutes each or something to play over a one chord groove and just watch each other. Like, I mean, I loved it because I was like 17 and I'd have a glass of wine and think this is ultra cool.
I mean, it is. That's most people would pay a fortune to sit in a room with Tom Quayle or Rick Graham for 3 hours and jam and drink a glass of wine. So
exactly, yeah. Luckily, I got to do that. But yeah, I mean, that taught me more. I think because it was a sense of, when you're watching a video or something like that, there's still an element of like there's a third wall there, isn't there? And it doesn't feel like you can do the same thing. Whereas when you see it in person and you visually see someone playing all this ridiculous stuff, it gives you that sense of, oh, I can maybe imitate that. Obviously, you're not going to get it exactly the same, but you lose the fear factor of, oh, I'm never going to be able to do that. You know, it's just like, go. And when you've got guys like Tom and Rick encouraging you at 17 to have a blast, that I think was just, fills you full of all the confidence in the world to do it, you know.
Okay, so one of the other things, and I mean, it's not for me to say what's made you a great player, right? But I can certainly speculate on, because I know a lot of people have either studied with Tom or certainly studied a lot of Tom's materials, his instructional materials, and it's very easy to go down the route of being, admiring, loving a player, and you absorb their sound so much that you just sound like that player. I can think of lots of guys that literally just sound like Tom Quayle clones, right? There's definitely a Tom Quayle influence in your playing, but you don't sound like Tom. Like, you can tell that you were aware of Tom, but you definitely don't sound like Tom. And I've always speculated that the reason that you have the kind of rawness and flair to your improvisation is you gig a lot from a young age, right? You were gigging multiple times a night sometimes, is that right, around Liverpool? So I mean, I'd even speculate that that's the reason maybe your name isn't more widely known across the world, because you didn't devote all of your time like many of us did to, well, I better get my name out there on YouTube and I better talk to people on Facebook and all of that shit. Like, you were out there earning the right to be as revered as you are. So talk to us about that kind of gigging experience and what came from that.
So I guess that came when I was 18. So it was when I just started uni. I actually went to Lipa for a year and dropped out to do the gigs, essentially. So I was lucky enough to meet, like, well, I had like they're all like best friends. 2 of them are the same age as me. And one of them's like a few years older, a singer. And essentially, like, we got a couple of covers gigs playing funk and soul stuff, and also a little bit of the rock stuff around Liverpool that turned into a case of us playing sometimes 6 nights a week. There's a street in Liverpool called Matthew Street where it's got the Cavern, obviously where the Beatles played. That's what it's famous for. But there's also like 3 other venues along there. Eric's is one of them that's been around since like the 70s, and so we'd play there. I think it was like Monday to Saturday maybe, or we'd have like one day off a week essentially. But those gigs were long. Like, you'd play, I think, like 3 hours maybe or so, like straight, and you're playing to just I don't know whether I can say this on here, but like the worst of humanity in my eyes. Like you just.
You don't live in Liverpool anymore, so of course you can say
it. Yeah. I mean, talking about like bad stories, I've got a ton of them, but just to give you one example, I remember playing funky music by, what are they called again? The Average White Band. And so there is no one in the venue at all, except one guy in a wheelchair who's a lovely dude, a good friend of ours. He used to come every week and shake maracas along to us playing. Lovely, lovely guy. And one other dude who came right to the front. Bear in mind, it's like an actual venue, so there's a stage and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Who came to the front, and as we're playing it, he starts messing with my pedals, which I'm just like, excuse me, please don't do that. And I can see he's shouting abuse. I can't hear what he's saying, but he's shouting abuse at me. And it gets to the point where he like grabs the singer's hair as the singer goes down and pulls the hair. And you're thinking, this is as I'm trying to play a solo and like.
Tell me you Axl Rose that motherfucker.
Well, actually, he's a UFC fighter now, like actually legit. Oh. The bouncer at the time, Chris Fishgold, came in and had to take the guy out because he tried to bottle the bouncer as the bouncer tapped him on the shoulder. So yeah, this is the types of audiences that we were dealing with.
And of course, in doing that, in having that audience member dragged out, you lost 50% of your audience as well. So.
Yeah, exactly. So
I don't miss gigs like that.
Exactly. But I mean, we went from doing that kind of stuff to like really, really nice upscale, like, corporate events and things like that. But I think it was just a case of playing material that's not necessarily written for guitar, so stuff like, like Luther Vandross and Stevie Wonder and things like this, that you've got a little bit of that in there maybe sometimes, but you're really trying to adapt like keyboard-based tunes, especially like 70s funk and 80s funk and soul and whatnot, to guitar, and I think that was kind of a learning process, but as well, being the only chordal instrument and having to do it night after night was kind of like, okay, that's a whipping, isn't it? Like people say about like the Beatles, like the way that they got tight. That was when they went over to Germany and they did the cover gigs, wasn't it? For day after day as a residency.
I have to say, right, you are a proper stereotype now because look, I get it. You're from Liverpool,
yeah.
So I'm sure you were constantly talked to about the Beatles growing up, but it's no one else in the world that will in an interview like this will multiple times give reference to, oh yeah, just like the Beatles.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. It's the only way people know, honestly. Like I tell them Liverpool and they're like, where's that? Especially in the States. Yeah. And then I say, oh, John Lennon, and the next thing is, oh, are you related to him? Do you know any of his family? Just like, yeah, it's that small, yeah. But anyway, sorry. So, yeah, I mean, doing that, the big thing, actually, I think, in that world then, was that we were lucky that our singer would let me freely improvise and solo when we do these gigs. That was a massive thing. So he wasn't one of these where it was like, it's got to be like the record. Yeah. Like, he actively enjoyed us messing around with these kind of things. And then it was lucky in the sense that about a year later, that band kind of disbanded except for me and the singer. And we met a load of gospel musicians. So they were from Manchester and actually as far as the Caribbean, the bass player was from. And that really was the difference, because these guys, it was another level of professionalism. And, how some of these gospel guys play.
Oh,
it's frightening. The reharms on the spot, yeah. And, just how tight they can be as well. Like, every gig felt like a Grammys performance, when you see Bruno Mars on the Grammys. Yeah. It was like that, except they were doing it on the fly, and I was just like, what am I doing here? Like, does guitar even belong in this? But what that taught me then, I mean, the gigs went down. I think we were doing like 3 a week at that point in bars, but that was the next big learning curve, because I was hearing all of these, like, I wouldn't say jazz stuff, because it's not. It's just the harmony that's more in depth, isn't it? And like different colours, and learning my place as a guitarist as well. I think like in a lot of that stuff, I don't have to play chords. It's all 2 notes or 3 note triads or single line fills that make it. And if I did play anything bigger, then the keyboard player would look at me like I just like, destroyed his night. Where it was that, and then the reharmonization. So like really being forced to listen. So like the bass player, I mean, man, the typical thing, like, so you know the song Funky Music White Boy, to bring it back to that. I won't play that, but the ending, I've got that silly delay in my ears again, but finishing, instead of like finishing on like an E7 chord, like which you'd expect with that, they do things like finishing on a C sharp 7 sharp 9, and I'd be like, where does that come from in the line? Like, how have you just done that on the fly? And it was really like a huge learning curve, because if you've never been exposed to those kind of sounds, what is that? You start to think, like, where does this craziness come from?
Yep.
And it was interesting to bring it back to Owain. Those guys didn't have a clue in terms of the theory and harmony. It was very much their own system, in the gospel world. Like, it taught me the number system, which was a huge thing. Like, but yeah, like to see them say things like 2 major, or things like that. I remember the first time I heard that at like 19, it was just like, what? Like, what is that?
Hang on a minute, isn't 2 minor?
Exactly.
Yeah, you adapt to it, and before you know it, that 2 major is just something that when you hear it on a track, on a record or live, you just instantly go, I know what that is. I know what that is. In the same way that I think that actually when blues guys play, they forget this. But if all you've done for your entire life is play blues, play 12-bar blues type stuff, right? Without really knowing that you know it, you know what the 1 chord to the 4 chord sounds like. You know that sound just without thinking about it. So if someone plays a song and it's not a blues song, and they play the 1 chord, and they're strumming that 1 chord, and then at some point they go to the 4 chord, without even really being able to describe it, you know what they've done. You'll be able to do that thing. And if you're going in and just exposing yourself to a shit ton more sounds, you'll know more sounds. Like, for me, the one that I always give to students to instantly recognise is like the 4 minor. Play 4 major, then 4 minor. It's just instantly recognisable. And I'm going to do it now. I always go, here's a Beatles chord. Because to me, I hear that and I go, okay, this could be on a Beatles song.
Exactly.
Or playing the flat 7 as a dominant 7 chord, like flat 7 7. These are just sounds that you get to learn them, and we're doing it the wrong way, right? We're talking theoretically about it, but you can learn that stuff just by going out and actually playing and learning songs and just associating it with that sound, that movement. How does that thing make me feel? So,
but in terms of like the typical movements, I started to recognize them a lot, like in the reharms, like the step down things that they do. So say I won't play it because of the delay of guitar, but imagine you had like
just turn your guitar down and play acoustically. We can hear you.
Oh right, okay, yeah. So imagine we're going to, I don't know, like say we're wanting to target this F major 7 down here. We would start say we're going from A minor 7, rather than just going straight A minor 7. F major 7. They do a whole walk down of like A minor 7, A flat minor 7, G minor 7, then the 5 of F. So the C7, then the resolution. And I began to hear that everywhere. I was like, oh my word, you can do. But then there's obviously all the different ways you can do that, isn't there? You could tritone sub that, like with the whole that kind of sound. And I was thinking, what about all the altered chords in between? Why don't we 2-5, 2-5 that? Like. And I was thinking, this opens up like a whole new world. Now, those guys couldn't describe that to me. But once I'd sussed that out, that's where it's good to have both ways, isn't it, really? Like, I was like, this opens up all the possibilities, and we're only doing that in one area of the neck. What happens if I try to explore that with all the other voices? So really, it was kind of like getting music lessons, but in a live situation, that you might not necessarily get going to a one-to-one thing, because why would you talk about that in a pop tune? Like, if we're in a one-to-one lesson, I don't think it's going to be that we're going to talk about Isn't She Lovely and go, why don't you try this?
Yeah, they're kind of, it's like harmonic expansions. It's just nerdy levels of harmony that even like now as a teacher, that kind of stuff isn't largely relevant for most of my student base, but it's certainly the sort of thing that I can sit and nerd out with someone like you and go, let's try doing this stupid thing here just for the sake of it and see how this sounds. And then, for me, you've got that magic of the reference recording I always give to people is So What by Miles Davis, because
man.
on that you've got three guys really going for it on horns. Miles Davis doing his thing, and he knows how to play modal because it's his thing at that point. You've got Cannonball Adderley, who does like a really nice mix of jazz and blues. He's somewhere in between those things. And then you've got Coltrane, who, like, by all objective standards, doesn't know how to play on those tunes. But from a musical standpoint, what he plays is fascinating because he's imagining chord changes that aren't there. He's playing changes that don't exist because that's how he would, at the time, would be drawing his musical vocabulary. So, to me, nerding out over all these weird substitutions and chord changes that we could put in reharms of things, cool. Let's go back to playing with somebody that doesn't really know any chords. That's fine. I'm just going to imagine that these chords are there in anyway and play those sounds, and before you know it, you've got these just ridiculously rich sounds. And
exactly, man, exactly. I think like to bring it back to the point of the band. You knew you were doing something right when like a keyboard player would look at you. You know, if you threw in something, like they'd call it throwing shapes.
Right.
Like,
okay.
you know, like as we're doing it, they'd be like, "Oh, I'm just throwing some shapes at you. Like, deal with it." You know, like if you threw shapes back and you got the face of. That's when you knew, like, oh, okay, I'm actually doing it right here, you know. But like, man, I mean, yeah, we can nerd out about it, but they'd accommodate for me. That was, I think, the real special thing because they knew that I didn't come from the church background and I didn't know these moves or whatever. But they wanted to push me as well. I remember the keyboard player even saying that. I think he was like 10 years older than me. And he was just like, man, I know sometimes you might feel a bit out of your depth with some of these, but he was like, I can hear that you're learning. And he was like, that's what we want. He was like, he said, you know, this is the time to make mistakes. We're playing bar gigs. He was like, if this was a proper gig, he's like, for sure, I'd be like cracking the whip, being like, we're getting in the rehearsal room and I'm showing you what I'm doing. But he was like, man, for now, just try and hear it. And that's the most important thing, isn't it? You know, like...
I love this idea of you playing in just... Is there anything better in music that... We think of playing music live and playing to people, and we're used to just playing to people with their arms folded, right? Who are watching what we're doing, right? But is there anything more rewarding than a nod of approval from a keyboard player? You play something and he just looks over and goes...
yeah. It's the
See what
it's
you
the
did there.
feel.
I like it.
Yeah, totally. Especially because we don't have necessarily the same tools to reharm, do we? I mean, we're stuck with like most of the time just playing triads.
We're
like,
ridiculously limited.
Yeah, like
we think of the guitar as a harmonic instrument, and it is technically, but in the most limited sense.
Yeah, exactly.
I wish I talked about this recently on was it Instagram? I put up a post where I was just doing a ridiculous like high falsetto vocal along with some of the Charlie Puth stuff.
Yes.
Because like his vocal on Boy is just funny. I used to do a lot of falsetto vocals when I was younger, and I regret not taking vocal lessons. And the two things that, looking back on, I regret is not training my voice more and not learning piano.
Yes,
because
man.
the level of harmony that will not just help you to understand, but also give you the ability to explore. We just can't do it on the guitar in the same way. You can get close, but no, you can't get close. You can do something, but you'll never be like a piano player. So yeah,
I think as well it's the range, isn't it? You know, like so a lot of like, I mean, Owain, to bring it back to him, he said to me that his level of harmony like jumped, even though he doesn't get it, but that jumped when he learned keyboards, like how he learnt all the crazy sounds and whatnot. And it's true, but when I try and like do the reharm thing just alone on guitar when I'm writing tunes like this, I often find that I'm like, oh, that doesn't sound that good until I program the bass part, and I'm like, because there's that like range now, like that works kind of thing. But on the guitar by itself, it just sounds a bit naff, doesn't it? You know?
And a pianist will look at them and go, well, they've got 10 fingers, they can play a lot, but it's more than that because they've got pedals, so they could play a sound here, hit their sustain, and then play another sound on top of it and just let it all ring into this just sometimes beautiful, sometimes cacophonous mess of sound. But they can explore that. For me, I've got a loop pedal maybe to help me when I'm practicing stuff like that, but it's just not... Or they who made the the Electro Harmonics Freeze pedal would be another silly little device you could use to do something like that, but we don't have close to what pianists have, unfortunately. What are you listening to currently then? Who are your... I can. It's fun actually because like from the Guitar Interactive days, I've interviewed a lot of my favorite guitar players, professional, like that's the wrong word, world famous, like idols for many people. And what I always found when I started doing those interviews, I love asking them like, who are you listening to nowadays? Like, give us your top
Yeah.
tips of some of these great players that you're listening to nowadays. And I just consistently found that like my heroes growing up, they don't really listen to any new music. They're just sort of locked in their place. Whereas I know you're listening to young up and coming players, right? You've got a world of influences, and I think probably the most valuable thing people will be able to get from this is kind of walking not a mile, but we'll go with it, walking a mile in your listening shoes, like taking on board your influences and seeing the players that you're getting excited about. So if you could give some tips of who our listeners could go and check out right now to get a feel for like the stuff that's exciting you, where would they go?
Blues. I know that sounds crazy, but stuff like Eric Gales, Philip Sace, Josh Smith, Keg Fletcher, who else? Even Stevie Ray. Like, I never had a Stevie Ray Vaughan thing when I was a kid, and that's came back a lot now. That's where I think, like, when I want to listen to guitar or more musically based guitar stuff, that's what I'm going for. I'm always like, when I grow up, I want to be one of those players, you know, like that is the dream. In terms of the modern stuff, Jake Wilson, I've been listening to his album a lot. That is insane. I mean, I'll never forget when I heard the clarinets come in on, I forget which track it is. I was just like, what is this? Where is this album going? It's a phenomenal journey, that one. Other modern players then, like Owain, obviously I'm a massive fan of him. He's probably my favourite, hence why I went to to him for production. Stephen Taranto, I love listening to him as a player. The music I'd need to listen to more, to be honest. It's one of them I haven't really checked that out as much as I should have done.
That's horrifying because that's where we are as a society today. That's what guitar players are valued as. Or
that's it.
It's like, I love this guy. I watch him on Instagram all the time. Oh, cool. What record should I check out? Well, I've never really listened to any of his records.
Exactly, man. Like, I mean, and I think that's a problem, isn't it? A lot of the time, like, we're not hearing more than a minute long sweat that someone's playing. Like, how does that translate in a 5-minute track? You know, like
For me, like, do you know Nate Murphy?
Is he
Instagram guy that does? He's done some really cool covers. He did a fantastic like Resonator slide version of like Stevie Wonder's Sir Duke. And he just did this, I'm sure it was Sir Duke he did, just wonderful fingerstyle arrangements, slide guitar. But there are videos of him playing like these weird double neck things, and he just does these ridiculously cool arrangements of things, and he's got so much vibe. And I love watching all of these videos. But I'm pretty sure he's not got any music out. I know he's not a full-time musician. He's a soccer coach.
What?
Yeah, I know.
Is he the guy on Instagram? Is his tag like Zeppelin?
Yes.
But man, he's a freak.
Yeah,
absolute freak.
But that's to me, that's a great example of the type of, that's what we live in nowadays. It's like, this is how we expose ourselves to musicians. I value his video content or the arrangements that he's done as much as I valued discovering Mr. Big when I was 16 or whatever. Like I've got that level of enjoyment out of it. I have that much level of respect and appreciation for it. It is still an art form, these short videos. It's a shame that people don't make albums, but at the same time, I mean, we both know this. We've both put out albums. You more so recently than mine. Like, you don't do it for the riches. You're not like, oh well, you know what I need to do during this lockdown? I've got rent to pay. I'm going to make an album.
The worst mistake you can make. But yeah, I mean, other influence I've just thought now because it caught me off guard. I've actually been listening to loads of, it sounds weird, but like a mix of Anomaly, you know, the keyboard player. Have you checked out him? Oh man, he's well worth checking out. It's very electronic, but with all the kinds of beautiful harmony and stuff. Weirdly, loads of like Brazilian traditional jazz kind of stuff. Like, there's a bass player in particular, well, two bass players. In fact, it seems like all of the ridiculous bass players are coming from Brazil at the minute. Michael, I can't pronounce his second name. Is it Pipa something or Pipa Quinya? I'd have to check. Maybe we can edit that later.
I don't edit videos, Jack.
And Junior Braguinha, I think is his name. Man, these two guys, I mean, the first guy, Michael, he's got a solo album which is just gorgeous. It's very like, I guess you'd say like straight ahead jazz kind of thing, fusion maybe. And the other guy is just, I mean, he's like a band player, but he plays with a few pop groups, I guess, in Brazil. And the stuff that he's adding to it, man, I mean, groove wise, that is what I dream of in my own music, you know, like he's free. Yeah.
I go as far as saying that Brazil is this decade's UK. Like there was a point, certainly like when Jam Track Central, well, Blues Jam Tracks and then Jam Track Central became like really popular. I know the rest of the world kind of looked to the UK and was like, how are there so many great guitar players coming out of such a tiny little island? Now I do see a lot of great Brazilian guitar players. There are a ton of great guitar players coming out of Brazil. So
and Andre Nieri, man, Mateus Sasato, who else is there?
That let's just go with those two.
There's two. Enough.
That's enough. That's enough. It's a massive country with lots of musicians in it, lots of people in it, but just those two. That I mean, I'm being a little bit facetious, but that would be enough. Like those two guys are so damn good that you'd go, oh, that'll be enough to inspire anyone. Yeah. So okay, cool. So let's move on to the final subject, which of course is the tabs for Escapades. And I thought this would be a really cool opportunity to get you to talk about some of your favourite guitar parts on the album, some of your favourite parts to play, some of your favourite parts, like maybe even some of the things that you would deem to be the most representative of your guitar playing. So yeah, do it. What are your favourite guitar? What's your favourite tune to play on the record?
I still think Neo it's something that, I don't know, it's fun to play. I actually used it as my solo spot when I did the Stu Ham tour ages ago, and it just, because it was like a happy accident. So that, I always think, like I mentioned on another podcast, I think the one with Tom Quayle, that was like totally written, like bar by bar. And I think back to it, and I've looked at the original video. No, it wasn't. It was a kind of happy accident. Like it was a case of this thing at the beginning sounded cool, so I was like, okay, I'll keep that in. And then those chords afterwards, it takes us back to the thing of, I had no idea how they were linking together. I wasn't thinking of, oh, I'm in this key and this will work with that. It was just, it sounded nice and it felt nice under the fingers. So I think that's been one that stuck with me, and the melody as well for that one. There is another one, Until Next Time, that's got a bit of a personal thing on there. That was another one I'd hold close. In terms of the actual tunes that aren't solo guitar or, you know, like that rubato thing, I'd say maybe 1993 is the favourite tune. Like, it reminds me... Sorry.
Yeah, well, I'm literally just checking right now because was it on one of the licks in 1993 where I was just like, mate, you need to tell me what the hell is going on here because this is absolutely nuts. But sorry, carry on.
Yeah, man, 1993. I think that was the one which I wasn't expecting to turn out the way it did. So that was originally just like a bit of a jam over a few chords, I think, to demo something. And then I am a massive fan of Kung Fury. I don't know if you know that film.
Of course.
Like,
yeah.
Anything like 80s synthwave or anything based like that, especially even the 90s video games when I was like a really little, like that was that kind of sound, wasn't it? You know, like Streets of Rage and stuff like that. Oh man, you know,
what a great example.
Those kind of games it was electric guitar meets super electronic instruments. And when me and Owain had like a Skype session, and we kind of discovered that we loved all of this cheesy, if you want to call it that, cheesy sounds. I'd sent him the demo for 1993, and he sent me back those sounds, and I was like, oh, this is going to be fun to write more to, kind of thing, you know? And that was another one of those tunes that it came together within the day. So I had like the verse, and then the, shall you call it, like the middle section, if you like, to it, where it changes to, it goes from chord 1 to chord 4, essentially, like in the minor
like a blues
key.
player.
Yeah, literally. That I had already, and the rest of it was just like an empty canvas. So that became really fun. And in the solo section in that as well, I thought, oh, wouldn't it be interesting if we moved away from that and played a few more interesting changes? And that was a case of, okay, let's loop the drum groove and let's see what chords will work. They were the chords that came out that I felt like were nice to improvise over. So that whole section, I think, takes away from the kind of like there's straight ahead on the beat kind of synthwave stuff. It goes to a more like real, if you like, feel, you know, of like, if we did that with real musicians, I'd love to expand that section, you know. So yeah, the sounds of it and the feel and the groove and everything to that tune, the synthwave cheesiness, that's my favourite one to play. And probably, if I have to listen back to it, because I hate doing that now, that's probably the one that I'd listen to first, you know.
I love that you say that, right, because I do these listening party streams on YouTube, and it's really fun sitting and listening to an album while people are watching me, and they can listen along if they stream it on Spotify as well.
Yes.
And it gives me an opportunity to talk about the record and say, oh, that's interesting, and you listen in like a new level of detail. And I've been toying with the idea of having some of my friends on, like Martin Miller or Tom Monder, and we could listen to Martin Miller's album with Martin, and we could talk about it, and he could talk about the inspirations behind things, and you know, how things have changed in his mind, and what he likes about it, what he doesn't like about it, influences, etc. But what I found from talking to those guys about doing things like that is they're like, I don't want to listen to my own record, man. I'm tired of hearing that. I hate that thing now. That's in the past. I've heard that more than anyone else in the world. And I'm like, to be fair, if someone suggested do a listening party of my own album, that would be a hard no as well.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. It was like, could we revisit that? Yeah, man. But I think 1993, definitely. Like the other tunes, so Lark Lane, Serial Killer, and Sky Blue Pink, like they were fun to do. Sky Blue Pink was based off like an old idea that I'd had, I think, again, like 2 years ago, maybe, the intro to that, and that was the first tune we worked on, so that still has something there. But I think of it as being like super old, and I've heard it that many times because it was the first one. It just doesn't do as much for me anymore, you know. Like the other one, which was a weird gamble, and I'm glad that people have said they liked it, was Serial Killer, because that actually, I can tell the story here. No one knows the story behind that, but it's based off a night out that we had in Amsterdam. So actually, no, sorry, not a night out. It was a gig. I was on tour with China Crisis, and it was Valentine's Day. I'll never forget that. So we'd flown from Liverpool at like 5 a.m. and someone decided it was a good idea to have like a beer at 5 a.m. in the morning. When you're thinking, we thought, oh yeah, because we'll have like 5 hours to sleep in the hotel, so it's no problem. One beer, you know, get to Amsterdam. Let's sleep, you know, catch up on all of that. Be fresh for sound check. It's all good. So we had that one beer. We get to Amsterdam, and it's actually a lot further away than we think in the car. And it's a case of the venue want to do sound check at like 3 p.m. And we're like, oh no, when are we actually going to get a chance to sleep here, kind of thing? So it's getting to the point where none of us have had food yet either. So we've all had this like one pint in the morning. So we're all a bit like, oh, it's cool, but you know, you're tired. Finish the sound check at like 7 p.m. because it was all rental gear and there was things that weren't right and we needed to fix things. My partner was supposed to come, and so was the original guy, Eddie, the guitarist. She was supposed to come. They both got sick and decided to stay in Amsterdam. So we were like, oh, it's Valentine's Day. Like, we've not got that much to do tomorrow. Why don't we, you know, like, have a beer and whatnot? Sounds like a good idea, but not when you've been up since 5 a.m.
And also, from personal experience, never a good idea if your name is Jack Gardiner.
Yes, probably. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, it was actually a really good night until I go to bed. They wanted like one beer in the hotel after we packed down all the gear and all this. I go to bed and think nothing of it. No, sorry, I think I'm going to go to bed. And then I was like, actually, we haven't eaten all day. I should probably go downstairs to like the hotel lobby and see if there's any food there that I can get. So next minute I wake up and there's an ambulance crew around me and I'm like, what's going on here? Like, what's the deal? And the woman says to me, how many beers have you had? And I was like, just like the 2, which I think it was probably more like 4 or 5, to be fair. She was like, yeah, I think you've had a bit more than that. And I'm like, why am I down here? What has gone on? And why has someone called an ambulance on me? And like the leader of the band, Eddie, the other guy whose missus was supposed to be there, he's like, Jack, what's this? Have you had an allergic reaction? And he touches it and he's like, it's a cornflake. I was like, what is going on? And he was like, what's happened? And it was a bowl of cereal that I'd just, because we'd been up since essentially 3 a.m. the day before, I must have got the bowl of cereal and just gone, oh, I need some sleep. Bang, straight asleep in the bowl of cereal. And instead of ringing, or instead of coming checking if I was okay, the lobby guy just called an ambulance on me. They were like, he's totally fine, he just needs to go to bed.
Died in a bowl of cereal.
Exactly. So I go to bed, and I'm sharing a room, unfortunately, with the oldest member of the band, bless him, Gaza. He's in his mid-60s. And so that's like 3 a.m. that I wake him up, he's not happy kind of thing. I fall asleep. And literally, I wake up the next morning and I'm like, that was a bit weird last night, but okay, I'm feeling fresh. And everyone's like, oh man, did you sleep through that fire alarm? And I'm like, what? There was a fire alarm? And they were like, yeah, it went off for like 2 hours, and like everybody had to leave their rooms. We all thought it was you that had set it off because we'd heard about the ambulance. And I was like, are you kidding me, kind of thing? So it turns out essentially someone was caught in their room. I think they'd set off the fire alarm, and someone else, out of anger because it didn't go off, punched through a fire alarm box. Right. So it just, because of the nature of where we were in the middle of nowhere, it took 2 hours to fix. You know, so if you hear on Serial Killer right at the end of that, there's like you hear an ambulance in the middle part. And then you hear a fire alarm right at the very, very end. So
I love that.
That was where that all came from.
There's a story to that. It's the lost art of instrumental music is trying to tell. Well, you're not really trying to tell the story, are you? But certainly you're leaving the breadcrumbs of the memory, which is nice. The memory of how you almost drowned in an inch of milk.
Yeah, exactly. Well, luckily there was no milk in it. It literally just was
a dry bowl. A dry bowl of cornflakes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Again, sounds like the Jack I know. So yeah, when it comes to the tab downloads, you have 2 packages available. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about them?
Yes, so the standard pack then has all of the transcriptions by yourself. I mean, they were impeccable. I think I only changed a couple of notes.
I mean, there was video for most of it, so
yeah,
that helps.
This is the thing. I sent you it. Was it 5-6 days after you said you'd started that, or maybe even less than that? 3 days did it take?
I think it was 3 or 4 days. Yeah, because So the short tracks and video, it just makes your life really, really fucking easy. There was only, it was literally one part on the whole album where I had to send you a message going, mate, what the hell is this? What the hell are you doing here? But other than that, I mean, I don't want to say it was straight ahead because, like, Andy James's stuff is straight ahead. It doesn't matter that he plays like a billion notes. Like, they're all ridiculously clean. They're ridiculously in time. Andy's stuff is very easy to transcribe. Your stuff, there's still a lot of work that goes into it, but it's not. It makes sense. The stuff you play makes sense, apart from that one moment. So.
Yeah. Sorry, I apologise. That was in Serial Killer, wasn't it? I mean, but man, you did that. I think without videos, wasn't it?
That was without video,
as you were saying. Yeah. So like, the speed at which you did that blew me away, and as well, like. The only thing that changed was obviously the ones where you didn't have video references, so you were just placing them in different ways. It's just where me being a bit silly, the way I finger certain things is probably not the right way to, or the logical way to do it. You know?
But the thing I found most recently, I've done a lot of. I've done yours. I've finished Kiko's record. I'm just going through Andy Wood's Junktown record as well. And and. It's really interesting to find that there is no such thing as logic when it comes to these things. Like, we all have our own little weird idiosyncrasies, and when I try and play somebody else's melody in the way I'd play it, it seems logical to me, but sometimes it just doesn't seem logical no matter how I do it, And that's where video helps. Andy's stuff, he's not providing any video, so that's a bloody nightmare. But yours, fortunately, there's some live footage of him playing a lot of the songs, so that helps. Your stuff, it's all logical and it's all playable. But sorry, I'll continue to allow you to talk. So you've got the standard version.
Yes, so standard one, 6 tracks, all the tabs, and I think all the backing tracks then. So, and they're in WAV format rather than MP3, in case there's any audio nerds out there that want the higher quality. That actually was a really difficult one to decide on, I must point out. Me and Owain sat there and we were thinking, for tunes like Neo and Until Next Time, is it worth it? Because they're all free time. Yeah. I mean, that must have been... It blew me away how you transcribed them, like, literally, the way which you've laid it out and stuff like that, because I was thinking, how is he going to do that?
I love how they ended up looking on the page, though. Like, free time stuff is horribly hard to do sometimes, but because the way you played, you're not... While you are playing free time, you're still playing phrases. You know what I mean? You're not just noodling. So everything very much has a sense of cadence to it. Here's where the idea starts. Here's where it ends. We need it to fit within a 4-bar framework there. Very easy stuff. So,
man, you nailed it.
Neo is probably my favourite in terms of looking at the way the tabs look. That one is
visually,
just visually, it looks great, especially for something that's relatively free time. So I know what you mean though about like giving people backing tracks for that. That
because
they're not going to come in a whole lot of use.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, we did debate, do we put click tracks in for them? But then I was like, no, you know what? Like, if we ever did this live, it would be a sense of just communication between two players, wouldn't it? And that's probably the way that we do it. It was just lucky that, I guess, for a playthrough video, that was already a live take, because otherwise that would have been impossible, literally, unless someone's insanely good at miming things, which I'm not. Then so that those two Until Next Time as well, they come with that. Then there's the deluxe pack, so that is the one which has obviously all the transcriptions, it has all the backing tracks, it has like the full album as like a digital download with all of the artwork, which for me, I mean, man, the big thing really when I started to feel like the album was real was when I got the artwork through off Ramiro. Like, I'm sure you had the same thing with your stuff. You start thinking, oh, wow.
This is really happening.
Yeah, totally. So that, I've included that, including, we did single artwork as well for Sky Blue Pink, actually, because, I mean, Ramiro, weirdly enough, he was actually, like, a fan of my playing. So when I got in touch with him, he was like, oh man, this is bizarre. He was like, literally, I've got all your lessons and stuff like that. Let's talk, But yeah, I mean, stunning job on that he's done as well. So you get the artwork, the album, digital download. You get the Neural DSP presets. That's the other thing as well. So the whole album then was recorded. Pretty much everything was Archetype Nolly by Neural DSP and the Fort and Cali suite. Those two, except for Until Next Time, and some of the parts on 1993, they were the GT1000, the Boss thing. So yeah, you get literally the presets that I used on that. That was what I sent off to Owain before he. I mean, he might have mixed and mastered them a tiny bit different, but it's essentially what I was hearing as I was playing it. You know, like
I was going to do more of a section during this where we were talking about how, you know, the album I was going to talk about recording, but I knew it was mostly going to be the Neuro DSP stuff, and I don't want to give them too much attention, you know, because I have some of their stuff and I like their stuff a lot. Their stuff's really good, but I've had to I've had to buy it like a pleb. You know what I mean? Like actually having to spend my hard-earned money on stuff. So. What I've noticed since building a new PC, my Google Chrome doesn't really know me yet. It doesn't know what I'm interested in, so I just get all these ads for different things that I never usually see ads for. And mate, the amount of Neural DSP ads that I see nowadays is like, good on them. They're really going hard on advertising.
Insane.
Constantly getting that clip of Rabir Massad like absolutely killing it because Rabir kills anything he does.
That is true.
So that will allow it. Plug to Neural DSP. Go check out that stuff.
They've got the marketing down to a T, haven't they? You know, like, but yeah, I mean, so that it feels really good. I think that's the difference I must point out with them, and for the price that it is, like. It's what, €100 or something like that. That's what always blows me away with them. Like they sound pretty much.
The thing with price on stuff like that is they are expensive for the quality that they are. They're not expensive at all. But
exactly,
you know, you are they're competing with Guitar Rig or that type of thing, which is the same price for like a world of sounds.
Yes, yeah.
But to people that are unsure, like it's better. It's much better. The Neural DSP stuff is definitely a lot better than the than Guitar Rig or whatever. I've been meaning to check out like the Helix and stuff like that as well, but still, like I've got my Kemper. I've got a couple of like the Neural DSP things that I'll use. I'm not a going out and looking for tons of sounds kind of guy. Like I find a few things that work, and then let's make those things work.
Man, that was it. I was actually debating on buying a Kemper or an XFX or something like that for the album. And then when I sent over the stuff to Owain, he was just like, man, it sounds fine. Yeah. He was just like, man, we can just literally, like, he'll do the production elements, I guess, like mastering and mixing and stuff. But he was like, don't need to change anything. All I did was, send the presets to him because he had the plugins.
Yep.
So it's just a case of, that was the ease of it, you know, rather than being like, oh, can we try reamping through this and can we try that? It's
the world of options type thing. Like, you could have that world of options if you had an Axifex or a Kemper, right? But I've had the Kemper now for like 3 years, right? And I'm not a technology guy at all.
Yeah.
It doesn't suit me, right? So I got the Kemper, immediately deleted every preset that was on it, and then downloaded maybe 10 presets that I have on it. That's it, right? I don't know. I've never profiled anything with it. I don't know how to go in and really change things in it. But I can just turn this one knob here and go through the 10 amps or so that I have that I really like the sound of. And I'll use those for recording. And for me, although that sounds like an expensive piece of kit for something that I'm using in a simple way, I like the fact that, believe it or not, that actually removes options for me. Because when I record a guitar now, if I record via my Apollo and use the Neural DSP stuff, I'm using a DI signal, which I'm then using a plug-in to give me a sound. When I record with a Kemper, that's not what's happening. I'm recording the actual tone. So it's not like once that's recorded, I can record the DI as well, and I do know how to do that, but then it's the same thing. I don't really want a DI signal that then I'm then going to mull over for the next 5 years of my life going, which plugin shall I try, and maybe I could try these different IR responses and IR cabs, and no, not me. I just want a sound, set and forget. Yeah, that works for me.
So it's all about ease at the end of the day, isn't it? It's the same with the gigging. Like, I mean, I've been using the Boss GT1000 for a little while before lockdown now, and like, of course I love pedals and I love valve amps and stuff like that. I was taking the Victory around with me for a while. Second I got the GT1000, I was just like, this makes so much more sense. Like, I can fly anywhere literally with the guitar and the pedal essentially, and that's my rig, and I plug in and a sound engineer just goes, oh, do you want a DI box, and that's it. Like, that is so much easier. Even though this sounds, obviously, it feels, I guess, better, doesn't it, on stage when you've got air pushing. it's just such a pain in the arse to move around.
Do you not
Like,
feel guilty for the guys that are obviously at the back of the venue listening to you playing and going, I mean, he plays great, but that doesn't sound like an analog signal to me?
oh god, yeah, that drives me nuts. Like, it literally drives me. Do you know the worst is moving on to this? The amount of stuff that I've had as man, I've had messages on Instagram that I could show to you that have pages upon pages of text saying about how wrong this guitar is. You know, and you're just like, stop listening with your eyes, please. Like, stop listening with your eyes. Saying, oh, like, the other guitars that you've used in the past, oh, they look so much better and they sound so much better. I've A-B'd both of these guitars on some of these tracks, and this sounds infinitely better than the other one. You know, and you're like, yeah, how do some people?
The fun thing that you can do, right? You should do this just as a backup, right? You should record some A/B tests of that guitar, video tests, just sort of comparing the two guitars, right? But make no comment on it. Switch the audio between the two. Right?
Yes, yeah.
So, and then, you know, people will inevitably use that as an example. They'll say to you, see, look, when I listen to this, the Sur, it just sounds a little bit, it just sounds better somehow. And then you turn around and go, well, actually, you know, just so you know, I flipped those round. So you're an idiot. Stop listening with your eyes.
I'd been so tempted to do that, you know, I was thinking, because the amount of those messages, I wonder if I've, like, I know it sounds funny, but if I've lost a bit of an audience because of that, because a lot do follow just for the gear porn, essentially, isn't it? You know, like they just want to see certain boutique instruments to reaffirm that they've made the right choice for spending. Yeah, exactly. That's all it is. You know, which don't get me wrong, that the Sur, I absolutely love it. It was my main guitar for 10 years, but it's almost like people can't move on from that sometimes. You know, like, I'm trying to say, look, this sounds way cool to me. Like, use your ears, not your eyes.
Yeah, that, I mean, there is no better way to end than that, right? Because it kind of goes back to right back at the start when we're talking about music theory, and use your ears, not your brain. Use your ears, not your theory knowledge. Like, our ears should be the thing that carry us forward. And I can confidently say, and I'll bring myself up on the screen so people can see me when I do this, I can confidently say that if you go and listen to Jack's album, Jack's EP, Escapades, and you use your ears, you are going to thoroughly enjoy it. It's a great listen, and I highly recommend that you go and check it out. So do that.
Cheers, man. Legend.
No worries. Right, I won't take up any more of your time, Jack, because you've been generous enough as it is. So any closing words of advice or things to say to my wonderful audience?
Oh, man. I think I've said this a few times now, but yet stop worrying about other players. That's the big advice that I should have gave myself when I first, when I took that break from social media. Stop worrying about Instagram players, YouTube players, Facebook players, all of that kind of stuff, and just listen to what you like. Don't let other people tell you what you have to listen to, or dictate what style you have to play, or dictate what level you have to play at, or things like that. Just, everyone's on their own path. And I think it took me a long time to realise that, you know, like, that is the most important thing. You've got to be true to yourself. I think, you know.
I've actually, like, that's a really good point. I've been wanting to make a video, but I'm trying to do less rage time videos on my channel because, one, it's not really who I am, and two, because the Guitar Souls podcast gives me that avenue anyway. I can rage on the Guitar Souls podcast, right? But of course, when that fake guitar thing kicked off, you did that video, and then I did a response video or follow-up video, and I started naming names in it. That really irked certain people's fan bases, right? And sheer amount of people that leave me really abusive comments, and they conclude, same with the Stevie T video, they conclude that there's jealousy. Like, I'm jealous of the way that other people can play. And it's like, you could probably have levied that accusation against me 15 years ago when I wasn't comfortable with who I am as a player, right? But you are never, ever, ever going to be able to make me feel bad about my playing because I play the music that I enjoy playing.
Exactly.
And my playing, there's been a definite de-evolution in my playing over the years, but that's a choice that I've made. I have followed a sound that I love. I absolutely love this slower swing, jazz swing, like western swing, country, jazz, blues. Like those are my sounds. And for somebody to listen to anything that I play and then listen to someone like Lucas Mann and go, well, you'll never be able to play like him. It's like, yeah, and that's a choice in the same way that he can't do what I do and he doesn't want to do what I do and I don't want to do what he does. And the best thing that you can possibly be as a musician is comfortable in, what you're playing. So couldn't agree with you more on that. It's I know how easy it is to really get bogged down and upset or demotivated even by seeing like players that are further ahead in the rat race than you. They can play faster, they can play cleaner, but
it doesn't matter, does it, at the end of the day? And as well, like, I think a lot of people, maybe this will come to light a bit more, but like, the online world is very different from the real world, I think, as well. Like, taking it back to the whole fake guitar playing thing and whatnot. I mean, that type of playing falls down. It's only for a niche anyway, isn't it? It's a super niche thing, people are going to be editing and stuff like that. And I get that there's an audience for that. But like in the real world, that falls down, and that's all that really matters at the end of the day. Like, are those types of players that really want to jump ahead in that rat race, are they going to be around in 10 years? Or, like, are we even going to care about, like MIDI guitars or things like that? Like, I mean, man, after I'd made that video, it was kind of like there was a month where I was getting all het up, and I mean, the threats, it was the same, I think, that you were getting. It was, again, the whole thing of jealousy and stuff, and I was kind of like, no, that the whole point of that was to point out that this is what's going on. Like, still I see with certain players, if they pop up, on like the suggested feed on Instagram, and you see the comments and people are like, oh, this is unbelievably clean, and it takes 2 seconds to listen to it and you go, they're doing it again. Like, that's never going to stop, kind of thing, But yeah, I think it's just kind of like, I wanted to make people aware of that, I guess. And, like, you've been making people aware for a long time, and you going back to guitar competitions years ago. There's something, I think, trying to be an honest person, that irks me when someone does that. It actually makes me feel a bit like, what the fuck are you doing? These people deserve to know what's actually going on if they can't already,
I think I know why we're jealous, though, Jack. You think about it logically, right? All these guys that they put their fake videos up on Instagram and they've got like, 50,000 followers or whatever. I don't know how many is a large amount for Instagram, to be completely honest with you. But, we're going to be really jealous when they go and cash those $50,000 in for their internet money credits, and then they'll buy their houses. Like, you can't make me jealous. I'm really happy with my playing. I've got a lovely career in the music industry, like, and that's only ever got better the more I've stopped worrying about other players. We keep mentioning the Beatles, right? I love the idea of the Beatles going, I mean, I like the song, but do we sound as good as those guys over there? Just isn't a thing. It's such an online mentality. Even when I was playing around London a lot with my band Hellcat Molly, right? Sure, like, it was very inspired by the 80s guitar thing that I grew up listening to and loving, right? So there was very much a show element to it. I wanted to have the silly spotlight moments where I'm doing the string skipped arpeggios and singing backing vocals and shit like that, and just being like really flamboyant with everything. Skin tight snakeskin trousers.
I love it.
That's cool. Like, I've always loved that. But still, even though that's the thing you were going for, in my mind, there was never competition with other bands on the scene. There was never like, am I as good as these guys? That just didn't enter your mind, because I don't think anyone that's got any experience playing in bands, no one thinks like that on the band scene. I don't want to play on a bill with those guys. They're better than us. That's just not a thing. You just play your fucking music. Why is it that guitar players, when they post videos online, compete and compare each other and like...
It's like gunslinger stuff, isn't it? I think there was one... Martin Miller actually posted, I think JTC shared a guy's video. Carolee, did you see his video? He played fives. There was a guy.
Yes. Yeah.
And Martin pointed out, he was like, what is wrong with all the abuse on these comments? Like, it was all like things they were mainly talking about his appearance, because he had, what are they called in the ear?
The flesh tunnels, yeah.
Yes, yeah. Oh, what? Look at the state of this guy, and you're like, what has that got to do with the guitar playing? And then the others were like, this just sounds like a bunch of notes. There's no feel, all of the typical things. And like, they had to be told that he was actually covering a Guthrie solo, which is probably the reason why most of them follow JTC in the first place. And you're like, oh, you don't see the the irony of this. It's just, again, it's listening with the eyes, isn't it? You know, I think. Sorry.
It's probably also a bitterness thing. Like, why is this guy being featured on JTC? Why am I not there? Like, I've practiced hard. I can play my stuff. Like, no, fuck this guy. He's got flesh tunnels. Like, he sounds like shit because he's got big holes in his ears. Like, shut up. Shut up, man. You clown.
Man, after I did that fake guitar video, the amount that came to me, because obviously I look way older, and they were like, oh, yeah, this wannabe blues guy, just because you just play pentatonics. I remember being like... Oh God, have I turned into that boomer?
I play that role of being that boomer. I love being that boomer, but I fit the role really well. I'm a little bit older than you, but musically, like almost everything I listen to is like 50 plus years old. So I am a boomer in that sense. But still, no, I love technical guitar playing. I think technical guitar playing is absolutely fantastic. I mean, I love your record for a reason. Like when you play with flair and passion, you just go for something. Like it sounds like that. It sounds like someone just going, it's that thing that I know you and I both love about Guthrie. It's the rawness of like him just going, oh yeah, let's do this. Those big slides into the bends, like there's passion and flair. I fucking love that. I love fast guitar playing so much. I don't like clinical guitar playing. So.
That's me. I'm the same as you. When it's too tight, it loses, or too edited, shall we say? Because there are guys that can play like clinically tight like that, like Rick Graham and Steven Taranto, Andy James. Yep. Like all of those dudes do it, and it sounds different to me. Like it sounds still like there's something there. When it's quantized, that to me is, I'm not interested in that guitar playing at all. Like I think that's just what's the point? Like it's electronic at that point. If you like the sound, totally, I get that. You know, like that's a choice, and we all listen to electronic music, I'm sure, at times. I mean, 1993, the song on the album, that's programmed since. You don't listen to
me. No, electronic music, no. No, don't be silly. Most of the music I listened to was recorded on wax cylinders, Jack. Come on.
I like it.
Right, I'm just going to run my credits scene. As always, this video has been brought to you by the wonderful support of my Patreon supporters. Their names are scrolling on screen right now. Thank you very much, guys. I hope you guys have enjoyed this, and thank you very much for bringing these videos to people and making them viable for me to be spending time out of my day doing them. You guys absolutely rock. If you would like to check us out on Patreon, you can join us for as little as $1. There is a link in the description. And of course, you can contribute more and you get lots of cool stuff in return, like access to my private Facebook group, my monthly study club streams, or you can even have private lessons with me, which is also good fun. If that doesn't suit you, as you can see, I also have books that are available, and there's a link below where you can check them out on Amazon. So please do check them out, and if you find something that you think would be appealing to you, pick up a copy. It is a huge help. You guys absolutely rock. Once again, Jack, thank you very much for your time. I am going to put some links up on screen now. If you would like to check me out on Patreon, there's a link up here. You can subscribe to the channel by clicking this button down here, and you will see 2 more videos. These will both be Jack. Go check Jack out. Jack's incredible. Jack's the best. Really musical. Go and listen to the album. Go and buy the tabs. Go and learn to play. Put a video of you playing 1993 on YouTube. I'm sure Jack will enjoy that.
That'll make my day. That will make my day.
Much love, guys, and I'll see you for another video soon.